What's really good, everybody? This is Nathan Allbach, and welcome to the podcast where we get into people's stories and go down a bunch of rabbit holes about what's really good in the world. So, I don't talk too much about songwriting and local music on here just because it isn't a major part of my life currently. But for those who may not know, from about maybe 2006 to 2016-ish, it was really everything to me. It was literally everything, as the kids say. I met almost all my current best friends in this time period just through going to local shows and joining some bands and playing my own music from a songwriter perspective and booking bands, and just that whole music scene, that whole lifestyle just became a huge part of my identity. I mean, it was the thing I'd look forward to every weekend, the thing I spent the most amount of my free time on. So today's episode's a special one because I got to talk with one of the most prolific musicians in my local music scene in the Philadelphia suburbs, and it's someone who really inspired my songwriting personally when I first started doing it on my own. That man is Brian Medlin. Brian has been active musically for over 20 years, which is just insane. He's played in more bands than I can list, to be honest. I mean, some off the top include Inkling, The Minor Times, Legendary Divorce, Wives, Personnel. There's a ton, and we tried to go over as many of them as we could in our talk. I'm not sure if we missed any, but we also talked about our shared experiences in the singer-songwriter scene, just how different that is compared to the local band music scene per se, just like the differences between like when you go out to a show, quote unquote, and then that's got like 6 local bands of kind of different genres and all your friends go, that compared to when you're a songwriter and you're trying to like corral friends and family to go out to like a coffee shop to see you play. So super cool. Brian also brought up his history of like panic disorder and just like something in that vein that we got to kind of go back and forth and share our unique experiences around that. He's also a new dad. So we got into parenting and what that's been like in the past couple months. We covered a whole bunch here. Actually, after we stopped recording, we talked for like another 2 hours so maybe there'll be a part 2 at some point. Who knows? But anyway, Brian's a really smart and sincere guy who I've always had a ton of respect for. So it was a real pleasure getting to do this. Oh, and he also does his own podcast called Volcano Vinyl, where him and his other friend Brian listen to a vinyl record and commentate on it while it plays. So you should definitely check that out. Super cool. Anyway, as always, feel free to hit me up with feedback for the show at my Twitter account. It's usually the best spot to reach me, which is just @ and then my name. And yeah, I hope you enjoy our conversation. Now let's get into what's really good. Brian Medlin, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Nathan. I want to say that I'm a regular listener, so this is great to be a part of this.
Well, you said you've listened. How many do you think you've listened to? Just be honest.
How many episodes?
Yeah.
Honestly, I listened to the first few when you first started.
Yeah.
I missed some in the middle, so I'm more like...
Yeah.
Been listening more recently. So, I mean, how many are you up to?
I don't even know at this point. Maybe it's like 30, something like that.
If you're up to 30, then I've probably listened to, 20.
That isn't...
Close
what?
to...
20?
Maybe. Yeah, I'm checking you out, man.
Why?
I want to know what's really good.
Oh, my God, dude.
In the world.
Literally... Every time I record that intro, I hate myself. Like, a part of me dies. Because it's like, I never, when I started doing the podcast, from the very first time I did that, I never scripted it. I didn't practice it.
Mm-hmm.
I was just trying to think, especially in those early episodes, because I've never done this before, and I was trying to develop not a personality, but, like a sort of vibe to get people into the show. And when I did my voice that way, I just didn't really think that much of it. And then the next episode, I tried to do it a different way, and it just didn't sound right. And I was like, I'll just kind of say it similarly to how I did the last episode, and then it just became the thing. And then I realized how corny it was, and I started just like immediately laughing after I said it every time.
Yeah.
But now it's just stuck, so I can't I don't know what to do. Like, do I keep it? I don't know. I don't know.
At this point, you kind of have to. It's your
thing.
tagline. Yeah, that is a shame. It's like this SNL joke. Like you just have to keep doing over and over, and it's not cool or funny anymore. But you're stuck with it.
That's literally how I feel. Absolutely, dude. It is. I was just talking. I mean, I don't know. We talked before we started recording about the episode I did with Kyle Shiva a little bit, and him and I during that episode we talked about just how odd it is for me, at least, doing these podcasts, knowing that people that I know in real life listen to it. You know, it's such an odd thing, and I'm sure we can get into this with your podcast as well, Volcano Vinyl. It's just so bizarre that someone you know would take time out of their day, their free time, to listen to you talk. Like, do you find that odd?
I do, and I want to clarify, too. I mean, listen, I don't always get through the full episode.
Of course.
You got some long ones.
Oh, my God, yeah. My wife says that every time. She's like, who would listen to the 2.5, 3-hour podcast?
I did, because you just dropped the one with Kyle Shiva today, right, that we're recording this?
Yeah.
So I did for the first time, because I just noticed it on my drive here. I'm just like, I'll listen to a little bit of it. I did for the first time the ×2, the double.
Yeah.
In Apple Podcasts, you know how you can speed it up.
Right.
I wanted to get that thing in and hear what I could.
Yeah.
Because it was only on my drive here.
Right.
So that's all I've heard of the episode so far is the amount it takes. You know, the half-hour
with the
drive.
×2. Do you do that often with other podcasts?
No, that's what I was saying. I never utilize that.
Yeah.
And I was kind of just like, well, this is a 2-hour episode, and I've only got a half-hour drive.
Yeah.
And they're still talking about former Belle.
Yeah.
So
we haven't made it past, like, the first band. How far are we going to get into this? Yeah, that's how I feel whenever I'm recording these things. So it's for me, we were just talking about this before we started recording here. Like, for me, the whole essence of doing this has always been, from the get-go, it's been about talking to people, especially friends of mine, like taking that time out of the day to have conversations that I would not normally have. Like, the only time someone like you or someone like I would have these types of conversations would be maybe over coffee. Like, maybe we get lunch. But even then, the sort of setting lends itself to being like, how you doing? It's kind of like a casual catch-up. But this really forces you to get to know whoever you're talking to. You know?
Yeah. And in your 30s, you have to have a podcast to force yourself to do these things now.
Right.
You know?
I still don't believe you're over 30. You know?
I mean, it's true. It's true. I get that a lot. I'll still get carded.
Nah,
sometimes.
Still? Right? Like recently?
I'm trying to think of the last time I did, but I want to say it was in the last couple of years.
Wow.
Yeah.
I remember the first time we met. We met the first time at John Irick's house. Right?
Is it? Yeah.
That was it. Because we were recording or I forget if I was just hanging out there or if John asked me and friends to come over to record that Christmas song.
I think that's how it was. I was doing a Christmas song, and I think he just told me, he's like, I'm gonna have a few other people come over because I kind of wanted a sing along thing, and I'm like, well, that's good. That's perfect. I didn't even ask anybody yet. So
you didn't even. That wasn't even like schemed. That was just like
it was schemed in the sense of just like. I wanted a sing-along.
Yeah.
But he just went ahead and asked people. It was like, oh, thanks. I don't even have to do that now.
That's perfect. Yeah, because I remember from that point when we recorded that sing-along with, I forget the whole group that was there. I think it was Carla and Rachel.
Kappa.
Yeah,
you
Carla Kappa.
Yeah. Are we allowed to say that?
Yeah. Hashtag ad. This is for, it was Carla and Rachel, and I forget. If someone else was there, but I remember
that was it.
Was that it?
That was the choir.
Yeah, we did like a few takes of that and just compiled all of the pieces together. So fun. But I remember that was the first time we met, and we kind of got linked up there through John. You were a local songwriter, and it's like, oh, I'm just getting into songwriting, and I don't remember when the time was exactly. It was somewhere maybe a couple months later that John or someone told me how old you were, and I remember thinking, no way. And I still feel that way. It's ridiculous. Like, you have some kind of like anti-aging thing going on. It's phenomenal.
I appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, I just had a birthday, so everybody's probably like, how old is this guy? I just turned 38.
Did I just force the hand on
you
revealing your age?
Yeah, 38.
Dang.
No,
man.
I'm just
because I met you. It was when you turned 30. I think it was like you were turning 30 soon. I remember I went to your Your
Were you
birthday
at my
party.
30th?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
It was at the PJ's?
Some
In Phoenixville,
bar.
right? Yeah, it was like in the basement of some bar, and I barely knew you. I remember at the time, but so bizarre, man. I mean, like we can. This is a good spot to kind of just jump in here because I mean we have history going back like 8 years, but before I want to like we can dive into all that throughout the conversation, but I really want to go back for anyone listening to the very beginning with you because I was going through, like I said earlier, before you came here, I was just kind of going through your Facebook and just thinking about things I might have missed. I'm like, what can we talk about? Like, there's so much to cover with all the local stuff you've been involved in. And I had no idea how many bands you were involved. I knew you were in like 6, but then I kept going and kept finding more. And then I just realized there's like huge chunks of your life and your history that even I don't know about. So just for anyone listening, including people that know you, because obviously I didn't know this either, like when did you first get into music and what got you into music?
Oh, wow. I mean, that... all of your episodes do start off with like this broad question where the person goes like, I don't even know how to answer that. Yeah. But I mean, if you're talking like the beginning, when did I get into music? Like 4 years old. I mean,
oh wow. So you were like, this has always been part of you.
Yeah, but playing music is obviously a different answer. But sure, I mean, when I'll tell you a little story. When I was 4 years old, I heard Phil Collins in the air tonight.
At 4.
This is the first song I remember liking. You know, I don't know if you have one like that. It's just the first song where you remember consciously thinking, this is a good song, or I really like this, or I find enjoyment out of it. This does something to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it was 4 years old.
That's insane.
In the air tonight. And I still think it's a great song. I still do.
I mean, it's a phenomenal song.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did that do something to you? Like, do you think biologically did something like irk its way in and change part of your the course of your life?
I mean, look, it's got like the most famous drum fill of all time. Probably it's got this like feeling and like this eerie emotion to the whole thing, and I don't know. I don't have any musicians really in my family, in my immediate family. So I was kind of an oddball where that I think it was just kind of inside me or something because drums was my first instrument, was my primary instrument. And so we're jumping to like teenage years.
Okay.
I met just a few friends, a lot of friends that I'm still friends with. One of them, also another guy named Brian, not the other guy named Brian that I do a podcast with. Yeah, there's a million. If you're 38 years old, you have a million friends named Brian. That's just how it works. I met him, and he was one of my really good friends at the time. He lived close by, so we were hanging out all the time, and he had a drum set at his house. And I'm just like, whoa, you have a drum set? This is so cool. You know, I'm 13, 14 or whatever. You're the coolest person in the universe. I can't believe you have a drum set. This is cool. And I sat down on it and, of course, didn't know what the heck I was doing. I had no idea whatsoever. But yeah, he showed me basics, through hanging out with him. And I just picked up on it really fast. I really think, like I said, that it was just ingrained into me to play
that Phil Collins
drums
song.
Because I don't know, because it came so easy to me. He said that just every time I would come back to his house, I was just immediately better, and then I became a better player than him, and it was like this weird thing that just happened. That how I was born to play drums or something.
Yeah. Was there a point? So this is when you were a teenager. Was there a point? Do you remember consciously in this time period that you decided you wanted to start actually playing in a band? Like, how did you initially get into performing?
Well, so when I was a little kid, I come from a sort of big family. I have 4 siblings. I have 3 older brothers and a younger sister. My oldest brother is always just a kind of an entertainer. He, when I was growing up, he was making music videos and movies and sketch comedy shows, and one of the first things he did was like a radio show on a cassette tape you know, when he was a kid, essentially. But he was always just putting on these performances. He started sports leagues with kids around the community, like playing street hockey and boxing and stuff like that. So I don't know. That was always just so much fun to me, just to be the entertainer and to be. I don't know. I looked up to him as just being like, wow, that's really cool. You know, I want to do that. And I don't know. When I was in elementary school, I never took school seriously, okay? So from like 4th grade on, I was a bad student.
Yeah, me too.
Because what I was interested in was just hanging out with my friends and goofing off.
Yeah.
So from around then is when I just started. So I was trying to think of this. I was really like going back, prepping for this interview a little bit, thinking about things. And I was thinking about how when I was in elementary school, I made up a band in my mind, you know, with my friends, and I drew these album covers.
No way.
And I had all the songs out and everything.
Wow.
I really wish I had these things.
That's like prophetic.
To this day, yeah.
That's crazy.
It's pretty incredible. But no, it came really naturally when I started actually playing in bands because, like I said, when I was a teenager, my friends were also, you know, musicians. That friend Brian had a drum set. Another friend, you know, had a guitar, could play guitar. Yeah. It was just like, oh, this is cool, this is fun. You know, we like Nirvana and Nine Inch Nails. Let's try to play some of those songs. Where you know what I mean,
totally.
Something like that. So that's really how it just initially started. Was just fun, hanging out with friends. And the cool thing is that's still how it is for me to this day.
It's so wild, man. So, like, going back then, what was the first, I guess, band where you actually had to put people together and put time in and write songs, or whether it was cover songs or whatever? Like, how did you initially kind of make your way into the scene?
So, my very, very first band, was a band called Red Ink.
Red Ink.
I was a vocalist, and this was a band that was, you know, formed. It was put together during a teacher strike at school.
Really?
Okay, so we had all this time off, and we just hung out in our friend's place that had just like a bunch of gear, and we formed this band. And I was the vocalist. You know, I didn't have my drummer chops at the time.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, and then so I think that was when I was in like 8th grade or something like that, and then the next year. I started like another band with the guy that we'll get into it later that I do a podcast with.
Other Brian.
And that band, again, was just, we were playing a lot of just Nirvana songs and Foo Fighters songs. You know, there was one Foo Fighters record out at that time, I think.
Right.
Maybe they had the second one.
Yeah.
You know, we were huge Nirvana fans. We were doing that. But as far as getting into the local music scene and actually out playing shows, I did this band called Relapse, which ended up being a band called Inkling.
I was gonna ask, like you said, Red Ink. I was like, wait, did this become Inkling?
So the band called Relapse ended up being Inkling. It was the same band. We just changed band names because of Relapse Records. We just didn't want it to be like weird and confusing like that.
Yeah.
So that was the first band that I started playing shows like in the local music scene.
That's wild, man, because that was a really successful band. I mean, on a local level, at least, I don't know the full history. I'll let you elaborate on it, but I just remember how many years ago it was now. It was just a few years ago. You guys did it was a 20-year reunion show, wasn't it, in Lansdale?
I don't know how many year of reunion. I guess maybe. It was probably pretty close to 20.
Yeah,
it was, 15 or 20 or something like that.
It was a big number.
But it was a big year, and it was all reunion shows, bands reuniting. The band Shine from Lansdale reunited at the same show. This band Dysphoria played, which they had like reunion shows prior to that.
Yeah. So I mean, like when Inkling was, you know, getting together and all that, like, what was the music scene like at that time? Like, was this sort of was that type of music? Because how would you classify, like, hardcore? Like, what would you call that? Yeah,
well, there was a hardcore scene in Lansdale, Pennsylvania. So this is incredible, first of all, that there's a scene in this town, because for anybody outside of the town, everybody kind of knows Philadelphia, but Lansdale is just this suburb.
It's so random.
30 miles or so north of Philadelphia. And there really was a scene, a music scene that formed right around there. And that band Chine that I mentioned in Dysphoria, that kind of was the scene. You know, these guys that are older than me, and you know, I was in high school, and I looked at these bands just like, whoa, this is amazing. I mean, the first concerts, quote unquote, that I went to were local shows like that at VFW halls and things like that. Yep. I mean, the first time I actually went to a concert, that was weird to me. Like I think it was at the Trocadero. I was like, this is too many people. I can't see the band.
Right.
I can't. It was
totally
strange.
Different vibe. So was that the only, like, as far as you knew at the time, was that like the only or just the main music scene in Lansdale? Was this hardcore? Was there like a punk scene? Was there a rock scene? Or was it really just primarily hardcore at the time?
It was primarily hardcore at the time. I mean, what was pretty cool about it is that every band really was doing their own thing. I mean, Dysphoria was kind of a metal route. Chine was nowadays what you would call almost a new metal route, maybe. I hate to say that, but there was this band 13 PFP. They were like a ska core band.
Oh, word.
So they were doing hardcore, and then they were mixing in ska parts, and they had horns and things like that.
That's awesome.
So everybody had their own kind of thing. And then I want to say that Inkling, my band, had its own thing too, because we were bringing in like more melodic stuff. So we had like singing stuff into our music, which nowadays, like, that is part of hardcore. You have like your screaming and your singing, but then it wasn't really like that.
Yeah. Especially for like whatever you want to call it, the OGs of that scene, because there was, even in my, whatever you want to call it, lifetime of going through the music scene around, like, for me, I think I started going to local shows 2004. So, like, even for me, there was between 2004 and 2007 or 8, maybe, most of the biggest local bands were pure hardcore bands, or trying to emulate those older hardcore styles from like the 80s and the 90s.
Right.
And then around 2008 is when a lot of these more metalcore and screamo and emo, like, all those styles kind of started to mesh together, and you got a lot more of the melodic singing, like bands like Cheetos and like the Devil Wears Prada and like all those types of bands that were hardcore partially, but then they had like these.
It's funny, I ended up touring with both of those two bands, by the way.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Yeah, because like there was so even I guess it kind of goes in waves, but like even in my lifetime, there was definitely a notable shift for a lot of the popular bands like CDC, the Cool Dudes Chillin', like they were just like a straight hardcore band in Lansdale, and then a lot of those guys were friends with other guys who started bands like Under the Gun or Prevail. I don't know if you knew them. And yeah. So like there was kind of that original scene where they were emulating a lot of that style, and then eventually newer bands came along, and then it kind of, that singing aspect of it, the melodic aspect, really took off in like the Warped Tour kind of culture of, you know, like post-hardcore and all that. So super interesting. I'll let you continue, but that was just like a little side note.
I mean, that is interesting just because it's like, we were kind of just like 10 years too early to be doing that, because we didn't fit in. It was mostly just hardcore bands, you know, with chuggy breakdowns and things. And another thing that our band was doing that I felt like set us apart too, was we were doing all these odd time signatures to our music too. Because we were big fans of this band Coalesce and this band Botch and bands like that. And then at the same time, we're into Weezer and the Get Up Kids. So our music was, if you just smash those two together, you know. So we just didn't fit in with the chuggy hardcore breakdown shows. I mean, we played all of them, you know what I mean? But we were always this odd band out. And for me, I enjoyed that aspect. I liked feeling just like, it made me feel just like a little punk, you know what I mean? That we were just like different than the rest of the rest of the bands, you know what I mean? Because for me too, the reason I got into, you know, the hardcore and punk scene was because you know, I'm going to high school, and the people that I didn't like are like the jock, you know, football players, and these like like macho masculine type that I just didn't feel a part of or connected to. I didn't identify with it whatsoever. And then I go to these local music shows, and you know, I like aggressive, noisy music, but here it was. I go to these shows, and people are helping each other up. You know, when they fall and they're singing, you know, lyrics like against racism and straight edge and all, you know, all these like positive things, and it's just like, wow, like this is really awesome. I mean, that's why I immediately just fell into the hardcore and punk scene, because it was just like, wow, these are people I want to be hanging out with.
There's like a natural camaraderie to that genre of music that for most people on the outside really don't understand or have a hard time understanding. Like I talk to a lot of the friends I've made in recent years who didn't grow up in any of those types of scenes. When you talk about or tell stories about those times, there's this disconnect where they envision the moshing or like the kicking and the swinging of punches and this whole picture in their minds, and they think, well, how could that be? Like, that doesn't seem like a positive environment at all. Like, that just seems violent and vicious and not at all like a communal thing. But there is definitely, like you said, there's something about those groups of people, whether, I don't know if it's because it attracts outcasts naturally, it kind of attracts people on the margins a little bit. And then those are the types of people that are in need more so than like the status quo of kind of coming together for a cause. Maybe that's it. 'Cause it's interesting, like I joke about this a lot. A lot of the kids I knew from those hardcore days who I know now, they're all like major sports fans. You know, it's like this weird thing where it's like you kind of like shift the tribal identity. It's like, okay, this was like my tribe. At the time, we all identified under this common cause, and this is like our brotherhood. And then you grow up, and it's like, well, now we have families. Now we're kind of settled into the American dream or whatever it might be, and this is like a outlet where like it lets a lot of that same energy. So it's like there is still like a connection, I think, between the people who are naturally attracted to like the sort of jock type lifestyle, but like especially in school, like when you're in high school and middle school and all that, that is the status quo of popularity. So it's like all those kids are cool and they have their cliques, and if you don't fit into that or relate to that, then you feel very alone, which is, I felt exactly the same way as you. So that's super interesting that you felt that way.
Yeah. So you just put it much more eloquently than I did.
But so that was so Inkling was like your first major like breakout band. So how long did you play with them, and what came after that like season or whatever of your life?
So Inkling, I guess, was maybe like 97 to 2000 or 2001, something like that. And immediately, just without a hesitation, really turned into a band called the Minor Times. Our singer quit, and then we got another singer, and we were another band, all of a sudden. And we were heading in a different direction. We're still doing that odd time signature thing, but we kind of just like stopped the melodic aspect and just went like balls to the wall, kind of heavy.
Yeah, that's some violent music. It's like really aggressive and awesome.
Yeah, aggressive and violent, but not, again, still not in the sense of like the like tough guy jock, chuggy stuff that I didn't like. You know what I mean? We were still on the fringes of hardcore. Yeah, I like to think anyway. Yeah, and that was with Inkling. We kind of dabbled into touring and things like that, but Minor Times had definitely stepped it up more. That's when I did my first just full U.S. tour, was in that band. With Inkling, it was more just like East Coast, Midwest stuff.
Did you headline, or who did you tour with?
We toured with... we never really did a headlining thing. I mean, we would go out with people, but it was never... We were never... I mean, anybody listening, I don't want to ever like make you think like this was like a big thing that I was making money off of or anything. I mean, these tours, I was, we were sleeping on people's floors and things like that.
It's like it was like a different time for like regional circus of music, because it was like in the Friendster, MySpace type days. So like people would, or Zanga even too, like you'd share musical events, and there was like networks set up all over the country, but it wasn't nearly as what do you call it, like inundated as it is today, where now there's just thousands and thousands and thousands of bands and styles, and it's a lot harder to get like to grow into a grassroots ability where you can just tour nationally. It was like a different time then, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even touring, in Inkling, it boggles my mind how we toured just without smartphones and without GPS.
Right.
I mean,
MapQuest.
An Inkling tour, we had MapQuest directions that we printed out and put into a folder, and it gets you into the city, but you get into town, and then it's just like turn right. That's all the MapQuest thing says. Yeah. So every town we got into, we'd have to just ask around, like, where's this place, you know? And we were, that first Inkling tour, I mean, we're using payphones and we're stopping at local libraries, you know, because they have the internet at the local library or something.
Cutting edge libraries.
Yeah.
It's so crazy, man.
It's, I don't mean to sound like, you know, like Henry Rollins, get in the van or anything, but it's like back in my day, like
I love how Henry Rollins talks about it. It's fascinating. I mean, it's cool. So for the minor times, like you did reach a certain, like I know you're saying it's not like you were breaking the bank or anything like that, but you reached a certain level of regional success in that band, right? Like, was that one of the more popular endeavors on that level?
I suppose so. You mean within Lansdale?
Yeah, I mean, just in general. Like, I know, like, there's a strong cult following for that band. Like, I know our friend Tim Bolch has a tattoo of your one album cover. I remember, I forget if he knew that I knew you or if you knew him before. I don't remember how it was, but I just remember him and I talking about you at one point. He's like, oh, it's crazy, like, that you, like, do songwriting stuff with him, because, like, my upbringing was listening to him in the minor times, which is such a strange concept to think.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of started the writing my own songs during the minor times. It was kind of just like this thing I was just kind of doing in my bedroom, you know, with an acoustic guitar while I'm out, you know, playing shows in the loudest band of all time.
Yeah. What started that? Like that was that so like that process of you getting into acoustic type playing, was there an inspiration for it, or were you just kind of like, I just want to give this a shot, like playing guitar?
Well, I was always I was never into a lot of hardcore music. I don't listen to a lot of aggressive music. Like the stuff that I do listen to, I really, really enjoy and really, really love, but it's not. It's 3% of what I listen to.
Yeah.
My absolute favorite band of all time is Radiohead.
Yep.
And I since back then, since high school, since Inkling, that's like been one of my favorite bands. So I've always listened to other music outside of that. So I guess that's what kind of inspired me. I was, you know, learning guitar, like basics, like since I was a teenager. So I guess that's just what inspired it. Was just like I wanted to do different music and do different outlets, and I guess that's why I ended up now doing like a million different bands, because I'm always like, I want to do this kind of music.
Dabble here,
dabble there.
Yeah,
I can't stop.
I want to kind of take this point to go back a little bit, because something interesting that maybe some of the listeners might be interested in, because I'm interested in it, is the fact that you're friends with Kenny Vasoli growing up. So I mean, like, going back to how like Lansdale, this whole suburb of outside of Philadelphia area was kind of like a weird what are we gonna call, like, pocket of music for people who wouldn't have any idea of like where this is, you know, like, but a lot of bands came out of this area. I mean, like at the starting line, you had the Wonder Years and a lot of these bands. Like, how did you initially get kind of hooked up into that scene? Was that through the hardcore scene, or like how did you get to know those guys?
Yeah, Inkling played a show with Ken Vasoli's old band, and I feel so bad because I'm spacing on the name. One of the bands that also played that show was the Spanish word for danger, but he wasn't in that one. He was in another one. I don't know, and he was like 15 or something at the time, and immediately it was kind of just like this kid like has something. He was a great singer, and he just had this outgoing personality, and you know, he already just like shined within this just like small little local show. Yeah, you know. But he, I guess from that show on, I don't know if that was the first time he heard us, but he became an Inkling fan, and he would just come out to the Inkling shows.
Oh wow.
So I just, you know, I'd talk to him and see him at shows, you know what I mean? It's like, oh yeah, you're that guy from that band that I'm forgetting the name of right now. And
There's so many bands, it's fine.
But so I really became great friends with him when, because he, as Inkling transitioned into the minor times, he was a fan of the minor times too, and would come out to those shows. It was just one of the minor times shows, one of the many just local shows that we played. He just he's like, look, I'm starting this thing, this thing outside of the starting line, and I want a drummer for it. I'm asking, a few different drummers. he didn't even know kind of what it would be at the time. He envisioned it as kind of a broken social scene kind of thing, where he's just like writing songs, and then all these different people are coming in. And it ended up being a band called Personnel, but that's how it began. He was just like, I'm a fan of you, and I just want to play and see if it works out, see if it clicks, because that was the thing too. It was like we got together for the first time from we're kind of from different worlds. He's the starting line and I'm the minor times, and is this even going to work?
Are there any crossovers, fans of these groups?
Well, there certainly is, because we played a show once together
on a local
at
level,
Penn State University with the starting line, and man, their fans did not like us.
I bet, that's like what is it? I mean, what was the target demographic? I mean, that was like a lot of pop. What would you classify? I guess just pop rock.
Classify.
The starting line.
The starting line. I mean, pop punk maybe. I mean, I guess I would call it pop punk. I mean, I don't know.
But it's a lot like happier and a lot more. I don't know what you want to call it, but it definitely attracts a different type of person, like a different your desired outcome.
Compared to the minor times.
Of going to a show where the starting line is playing. Like you want something out of that show that's probably a lot different than if you were going to the minor times.
Yeah, I would think so, for sure.
So so with Personnel then, like how long did you play in that?
And so in my researching in my brain, I should have probably organized like a timeline a little bit better.
Yeah.
But I think the very first show I want to say was December of 2006.
Okay.
And that's when it's kind of still wasn't even a full band yet. It was just Ken and then two drummers. He tried out I don't know if he tried out a few different drummers, but he really just kind of landed on two of us to end up playing on the first EP. And so we played a show. It was the last show for the guys in the Wonder Years, their old band. It was their last show. That was Personnel's first show.
Wow.
We just played the show that way with just a drummer and him, and then me and the other drummer swapped, halfway through the set, and then he played his songs that he plays with Ken for the other half of the set.
That's cool.
That was December of 2006. I guess the band went up until 2010, maybe, I want to say.
Was that like your main band throughout those times, or what else were you doing?
It was, because the minor times ended, I think 2007 or something like that. So it became my main band. I wasn't, during the minor times, I was going to community college. I was done doing that. So it was my main thing. You know what I mean? I had a job, obviously. I've always had a job throughout all of this.
Of course.
Again, I wasn't. None of this was making money. So, but Personnel was the most full-time musician thing that I ever did, and we were touring a whole lot.
Yeah.
And it was my first taste at full-time musician life. Was through that band.
Yeah. What made him, I guess, kind of abandon that project? Was that just did it kind of just fizzle out like all things do, or what was it like toward the end there?
Yeah, I guess it just, it's funny with Ken Vasoli, his bands, they never really end, because he never really says the starting line. It's never really, they never broke up.
You know what I mean?
They're still playing a show once a year, a Christmas show or a couple shows around then.
Yeah.
But it just kind of fizzled, I guess, the way the starting line did. It's like when Personnel started, he just became more focused in that. And then when Vacationer, the band he's doing now, started, that just became more of his focus.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it started it ended in the way that it started, and that it really was, Ken's thing, definitely his outlet, and he's the musical director behind the whole thing for sure.
Yeah, you said so. In that time period, you were doing a little bit more touring. So, I mean, were you working a part-time job? How are you able to sort of balance your work and your touring life during that time?
I was really lucky in that I had a really cool boss that just saved my job for me.
Wow.
I would just say, all right, I'm going on tour, for these 2 months, and they were all right. Now, granted, it's like half, Good Boss, and then half just like, it was a retail job, so they probably just needed people,
Yeah.
And
they're like, we know Brian's a good worker. We won't fire him for this.
Right, exactly. So it could have just been because of that too. It's just like, we need somebody, and here's somebody who's already good at doing it. It was at a CVS pharmacy. I worked back in the pharmacy. I was a pharmacy technician.
Yeah.
But they would just let me go, for 2 months, and that's really how I sustained doing it, because the personnel was doing better than the Minor Times and Inkling, tour. We weren't sleeping on floors. We actually like could get like a hotel room or a motel or something like that, and we're making like the money to pay for the gas and to pay for food and stuff like that. So going on tour was living for free, but it's just like when I was
it's not like you're making
home,
bank while you're on tour.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Like we weren't making money. It was just we were breaking perfectly even on our lives, to where we could have food and shelter.
Right.
So when I came home, I obviously I need to work, and that's how I was like really lucky during that time, is that my work was held for me.
Yeah. So what was it like in that transition period? Because it's interesting. I didn't mean for this to happen, but it's cool how that period was right around the time that I met you. It's like we met in 2010, I think, when you did the Christmas song. It's like, what was it like for you to come out of that few years of your life where it's like, you're in this band that has some level of national success, and you're touring, you're doing all this cool stuff, and then that kind of fizzles out, and like you're someone who had been doing music since you were a kid. So now you come home, you're back to working full time, but then obviously you start getting really deep into your songwriting. So like, what was it like in that transition period around that time?
Yeah, that was strange, because it was just like, I always had these tours to look forward to, and that was just my next thing, and that's all I really thought about. You know what I mean? It was just like the next step. So when there's no tour planned looming, in the next month or something in the future, like what am I doing exactly? So that was strange. I mean, luckily with personnel, I got to experience also just shows like up and down. I mean, like you mentioned, Devil Wears Prada and Chiodos and stuff like that. Like we did tours like that, like with Under Oath, and where we're playing like these big Electric Factory kind of size places. Yeah. But personnel also played shows to like 20 people in a small club. Right. Also, so there was always had that big huge balance of in between. Yeah. But I was, like I said, I was always in plucking away and making up songs in my bedroom. I was still doing that in personnel, and I felt like I was getting better and better at doing it. You know what I mean? Like since the Minor Times, it was like, all right, I'm like a little better at this now. So I don't know, because that just never ever stopped, I guess, is how I ended up meeting you. And again, through John Eyrick, really. John Eyrick he's
a connector.
He is. He was hosting an open mic at this place in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania called Steel City Coffee House. And he's just like, look, I started doing this open mic. We got to have like some people to come out. I'll sign you up, just come out. And I was like, all right, I have all these songs I've never played out ever, you know what I mean? But I have like already like 5 or 6 like EPs of songs.
And you're a seasoned vet. You're not afraid of crowds. So.
And I'm not afraid of crowds, quote unquote, but because that is interesting. It like playing in the Minor Times and personnel, I'm behind a drum kit.
That's true.
When you're on an acoustic guitar,
it's just
and
you.
The entire room is quiet. It's just you. Yeah, every little note, every little flub, every little thing is heard. It's just as exciting. It's just as thrilling as playing to thousands of people, because it. I don't know. Honestly, I like live for those moments when I'm playing like a solo set, like I'll purposely get quiet so everybody just kind of like holds their breath.
They have to come down to your level. I love that. Yeah. It's so when you're playing for people like that, you're almost like a conductor. Like obviously it doesn't work if you're playing at a bar all the time. Like there's some bars that are too rowdy, there's some crowds that are too aggressive, whatever. But a lot of the times you have that level of control, especially if you're moderately talented. Like if you're awful, usually it's a lot harder to gain respect of the audience. But if you're decent enough and you're able to kind of, change your tone and your volume at certain levels, you can literally bring the crowd with you wherever you go, which is you're right, it's a cool thing because they're hyper-focused then on what you're saying and what you're doing. And then it raises the stakes because then, like you said, any little thing can be heard, like when you make those little mistakes, it becomes this very intimate. It's not like you accidentally hit the rim on your snare instead of like right in the dead center where you wanted to hit it. I mean, this is like everyone in the room's like, like they know,
Oh yeah.
So it's cool.
Yeah, and Steel City Coffee House was a really cool place, a really cool crowd because they all are very attentive and they are interested in what you're doing. And an open mic is wild because you never know who's going to go up there and what they're doing. You hear so many different types of things. I mean, songwriters, but then you'll even get like poetry readers and comedians
spoken
and
word,
all sorts of things. So with Steel City Coffee House, it was like I kind of dove into this whole. I'm sorry that I keep creaking this chair. I think it's me.
I don't care. There's some person listening right now who's just like, that fucking chair. Yeah.
So Steel City Coffee House, it kind of introduced me to a whole new scene. It's where I met you and a lot of other singer-songwriters and kind of what propelled me so much more into the singer-songwriter thing.
Right. Yeah, that community was, it's still around. Like, I don't know when the last time you went. It's changed form and ownership a lot the past several years, but especially at that time period, and I've talked to a lot of people about this, where there was similarly, and I kind of want to jump back to this in a little bit too before we get too far, similarly to how for you and for me at different time periods, maybe in the late 90s to the early 2000s to the mid 2000s, there were specific times in the music scene on a local level where it was just a cool time. Like, I don't know, it's not like it was the 60s. It's not like, there's like something in the air, but it was a very unique time where we were kind of in between the mass influx of new technology, where like barely anyone was on social media, and if they were, it was just basically MySpace or something like that. So on an intimate level with local stuff, a local show, like you said, no one had smartphones yet, so it's like you really, like, when there was something going on that weekend, word spread by word of mouth, and people all told their friends, and it's like, we're looking forward to the show this weekend. It was a similar thing with Steel City around like 2000. It was going on before I got into it. I got into it around 2008, 2007, I want to say, somewhere like that. But somewhere in that time period to like 2010 or 2011, like that pocket of years, there was just a lot of really cool folks that were coming through that area. Phoenixville, Pennsylvania in general, that suburb, it's a cool place because it's like, it's a traditionally poor town, so it's like it's not a wealthy area. Now it's becoming a really like metropolitan. It's like the new Manioc.
It is,
but back then it was a dangerous area. Like, they did a whole revitalization program over the course of 10 years, when they kind of like gentrify certain parts of it. And that time period when you were getting involved there, when I was getting involved there, was kind of like right in between. Like, they had just started to change a lot of, like, clean up some of the streets, clean up some of the housing. More restaurants were coming in, and the types of people that were coming through, they had a great community of, I forget the place. I think it was like an adult special needs place, but like there was some older people who were like near retired, some middle-aged people, some kids that were our age, like all different levels of special needs. And the people that worked there, I don't think it was like partnered or anything official like that, but they would bring those people to open mic nights, and like some of them were poets, some of them were just straight up storytellers. Like, they'd bring in like short stories and just like read chapters of a story for 10 minutes during their set. And some would just like sing into the mics. There was like that cool diversity aspect of it that you really wouldn't get that many other places. And then there were a lot of older musicians, just like general like older people that grew up in that area, and they'd come and they'd play their electric guitar, or they'd sing some Bob Dylan cover, whatever it might be. And then you had a lot of these younger kids that were our age that were just like, I don't know what it was. I mean, there's just a lot of different like indie, folk. There's some experimental, like just so many different styles of music that for me, like I was 13. I was almost 14. I was still 13 when I went there for the first time. And John Irick actually brought me as well for the first time because he was doing the open mic there. And they're trying to like recruit people. And it was like a 30-minute drive from where I live. So it wasn't, I wasn't even on my radar as far as what was going on. And yeah, same thing for me. I mean, when I started going there, just like it introduced me to a new local scene, because just like you grew up in this hardcore scene at a specific time and place. I grew up like a decade after, kind of like trailing behind that, where it was like the Christian hardcore scene was really big. Like there were some like church venues that would host like regional and national, like kind of like fringe, somewhere like Christian self-identified bands on like Solid State Records or Tooth and Nail Records, like trying to think.
Training for Utopia.
Yeah.
You know that band?
Yeah. And like I'm trying to think of some of the bigger ones that came through. There was some like one band called Showbread came through. I think the Chariot actually came through at one point. There were some like decent sized bands in that scene that would come through, and then it would be the support acts were all like the local hardcore bands. There was kind of like that mishmash that I grew up with, and similarly to you, like my, I guess, exit out of that, I mean, you kind of had Kenny Vasoli and some friends who were into different genres that kind of bridged that gap. Like for me, it was like John Irick taking me to Steel City and like experiencing this new scene where it's like, oh wow, these are people with acoustic guitars and they're singing, like it's all singing, and it's just such a different thing. And like that place still exists and there's still a vibrant community there, but it's a lot different than that time period where there was just like a lot of really unique talented people in that time. So super cool. We kind of both like shared that crossover moment getting into that,
at the same time. It's true. Yeah.
So like for you in that time period, then when you started to record and all that, when you what was it called In Bedlam, was that the record that you put out? Mm-hmm. Right, so that's like 2010, 2011, something like that.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, so you put out that record. So I mean, from that point in your life where you kind of, because you were probably what, like 29 or something like that. Like, was there a point where you were thinking, all right, should I just kind of put this on the back burner and just make this kind of like a, more of like a hobby, like not as much of a central focus, or was it kind of like, oh no, this is just my new thing now, like acoustic music is my new project at that point?
I guess it felt that way. I mean, in that record, In Bedlam, I think was still during Personnel, maybe. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I never really had this like conscious decision, like oh, this is, my new thing. Because the solo stuff that I've always done, it like was always while I was doing another band also. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like, it's not like Personnel like was my last band. Like I'm still doing bands and still have been doing bands. So yeah, I never, I guess that was the closest time, like point in my life where the solo thing was my main thing. The main gig was probably around that time. Yeah, and like I said, I like playing at Steel City Coffee House was really the first time I ever did it. Ever just like played with my acoustic guitar in front of people for the most part. Yeah. So it it inspired me a lot, because you saw so many good people, it's just like, wow, I got to step up my game and things. Yeah. And around that time too is the first time I really learned standard chords on the guitar. Like I always just, made up chords that just sounded good, or I knew power chords. Too. Yeah. So when I learned standard chords on the guitar, it opened up my universe. I was just like, wow, the sky is the limit. Yeah, right. Yeah, and that's when I feel like personally, then I guess stepped up just my singer-songwriter game. I don't know. I just felt like my songs were finally like at a pretty good place then.
were you seeing a level, like how was the reception of your friends at that time? Because I mean, you had this large following from like over a decade at that point of playing in different bands. Like, did you have like crossover of friends that kind of joined your new endeavor with this? Because there was a lot different, obviously, in those styles, and you're a lot older at that point too. So it's like people were, I'm sure, like a lot of your friends kind of started to drift out of the scene at that point, right? Like there's kind of like a changing of the guard a little bit. So I mean, like how was the support around that time for that record?
I had an actual release show for that. It was at another coffee place. It was in Lansdale. It doesn't exist anymore. It's called Virago.
Oh my God! Yeah, we played there together. I think.
They did an open mic for a little bit.
Yeah.
I think we might have attended that a couple times or something.
That's funny.
But so I did a release show there, and it was great. I mean, so many of my friends and family came out and was very supportive, and we packed the place. There was no tables, left. There's people just standing against the wall and stuff, and that was really, really nice because I just had like I think they gave me just like 2 hours or something to just do whatever I wanted. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I just like at that point I'd played so many open mics, so I had this like cover song repertoire, and I just blasted people with just so much music. I even took like a break in between. Like it's one of these like you do a set, and I took a break, and then I did a second set.
Oh my God,
type of thing.
It was your night.
yeah, it was pretty wild to get to do something like that. So people were very supportive, and really why I kept writing songs. I mean, the reason the first EP that I put out was really just kind of like I'll just give this to friends and family, and I just, they said lots of nice things, and I heard lots of good feedback, and that is what kept me going. I mean, granted, like, were they all like part of the scene and stuff like that? Like, no, not at all. Yeah. I mean, I in that sense, I had to make, new friends or new like connections.
Like me.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, you know what I mean? I'm sitting there at Steel City Coffee House. I know John Irick. I don't know anybody else here.
We're in that same boat, yeah. So that's what I was kind of getting at, because it's interesting how, like, growing up, you had the built-in scene to that music. Like, there's not I don't really think there's one anywhere. There's not like a local acoustic music scene. You know what I mean? Like I mean, I guess in some cities, like there's some like circuits of coffee shops and that type of thing. But as far as on the level of having that communal aspect of everyone kind of knows each other, and there's crossovers between punk and hardcore and metal and even just like post-rock type of stuff, and you'd all share shows. Like once you kind of move in to the acoustic songwriter realm, the scene itself, it's a lot smaller, it's a lot more, this is about you, and like, how do you build your own, like, because people aren't coming to your shows per se to see the band. Like, obviously, if it's a good band, you're going to have more people wanting to come, but they're coming for you. Like, they're coming, if you're writing the music and you're putting it online or handing out CDs and people like the music, it's like, oh, I want to go see Brian play. It's a lot different than like, oh, I want to go to this local show. There's a bunch of our friends' bands, or like, you have a friend's band that's playing. I want to see this band. It's like a very different vibe. So I mean, like, how was that kind of transition for you, and like having to grow and meet new people and build a new audience for yourself and that?
Yeah, you're right. It's like, that's like it's Saturday night and let's go out to a show, and then we'll go out to a diner afterwards or something like that. This was like, let's go hear this person's songs, or their
way
new,
different.
Yeah, their new material. What are they saying now?
Yeah.
It was definitely a lot different and a very different experience. And when this all started too, I'm kind of going to go off topic, but around when I met you too, because I know you kind of shared this, and maybe we shouldn't go too far into this tangent, but I kind of had this life-changing experience in the sense of that I went through this period of having extreme anxiety and panic attacks. I mean, I don't know.
No, let's get into it. If you want to get into it, I want to get into it. I mean, I've talked about this on previous episodes. It's interesting hearing you say that, because obviously from the time that we got to know each other around 2010, 2011, we started to play shows and all that. I had no idea. And like here I was starting to go through it in 2012. So yeah, get into it.
See, and then I didn't know that about you. So, and that's what's the interesting thing about it is that it's this like inside your mind, you're going through this personal like hell, like it feels like a tornado, but outside nobody knows or has any clue, maybe people close to you or if you're saying something or acting strange,
like they might notice a little like tick or something like that. But.
Sure, yeah, but I mean I had it to the point, as I'm sure you did at times too, where it was debilitating. I mean, you wouldn't have seen me. Like I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't get up off the couch, like anything. You know what I mean? Like if a certain, if the thing that I was watching, if the Planet Earth episode that I was watching that was like made to calm me down, like if it went into something, like sort of. There's an animal chasing another animal, like that might set it off for me again or something, you know what I mean?
Something existential, something like more violent or anything that could just spin you out of control.
Yeah, or just that there's you don't even know what's going to set it off. Right. Like it's not even a thing that sets it off, and then that drives you crazy.
That's
it's like,
the worst.
Why can't I calm down, or why do I feel this way? Yeah. Or whatever.
So do you remember what started this for you? Was there like a specific traumatic event, or did it just kind of start, the wheels just kind of started turning before you knew it, you were swept off your feet?
It probably was gearing up, but I think what like the kind of spark that like lit the whole thing was I was in a car accident. And because it was really like the next day that it really just kind of started. It was like, what's happening? So I think that was really it, and being in the accident like makes you question all kinds of things, about your own mortality and things like that. So at the time I didn't have any health insurance, and so I think with all of that it just kind of spun out of control. And again, I'm trying to think of the timeline, so that. My EP, it's called Nightmares, and it's all like on piano, is all about that whole entire period. So I guess I got something out of it, like something inspiring.
Isn't that so bizarre to think about? It's like, I got some good art from this horrific time in my life. Yeah. So I mean, okay, so you went through, what year was this? The car crash happened?
I'm like so bad with this kind of stuff.
Because your brain kind of like blanks. You got to blend stuff together.
Yeah, especially the more you get into your 30s.
Yeah.
So I mean, I could look it up when that Nightmares EP was, because I guess it was like before that or a year before that. Maybe I forget how long it like took, but 2010 or something sounds about right.
Wow. So, like, in the aftermath of that, I don't know how deep you want to get into this, because this is just it's very personal, but I'd be interested to know where your mind went. Is like you talked about, like, how you had to deal with the questions of mortality and all that, and I had a very similar, I guess, existential experience when the whole thing happened with me, when I developed panic disorder, and that was, like, the number one thing, and it still is to this day. Like, that's, even though I don't have daily panic attacks or anything like that, I tell people, the way I describe it is I have tremors. So it could happen, like you said, literally out of nowhere, unprovoked. I will be at my desk working, I will be driving, I'll be watching TV, talking to someone. All of a sudden, sometimes it starts with my vision blurring. Like I'll be focused, like I'm focused on you right now, looking at you, and then all of a sudden my eyes kind of cross, and then it gets blurry, and then my brain, like something clicks in my brain, like a pathway, and then it says something's wrong, and then that seed of a thought spirals me out, and then I think, oh, I'm having like an aneurysm, or I'm having a heart attack or a stroke, and then that thought, it's like a virus. It just keeps going and going and going, and now, like years and years later, because it was 2012 when it started for me, over time, it's been slow, but like over time, I've developed kind of like mechanisms where I can catch it, and then I really identify it, and I focus on it, and I know how to breathe, and I don't let my mind do the thing that it's done so many times. It just happens so many times at this point, and it doesn't always work, but sometimes it goes for like 5 or 10 minutes, but I can usually catch it and get it to go away in like a minute or two, but that all stemmed from that fear of death. It all stemmed from like that feeling of like, I don't know what comes after this, even if it's just nothingness. Like the idea of people always say it's like going to sleep. Like you don't remember being asleep. Like when you're asleep, you're just asleep, and there's nothing there. But even just the idea of that is a terrifying thing. If like you don't know what comes after. So like, what was like the existential drive for you, and like how did you manage that in the aftermath of everything?
Oh boy, yeah. I mean, luckily, I don't really have it so much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
congrats.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
It's incredible. Like just whenever anybody says they have anxiety and things like that, I do get it because I feel like I was there, and but I don't want to say I'm even there anymore because I know what it was like.
Right.
You know what I mean? I feel anxieties throughout the day, but it's just like it didn't compare to anything different. Like it did at that time period in my life. So in the heart of it, like I was on like Xanax and stuff like that, and then eventually like the panic attacks kind of calmed down, and I started on Zoloft, and I was on that for just like a long time, you know what I mean? And that, I don't know, after a while on that medication, I felt like all of my like feelings and emotions and senses were just kind of dulled.
Why are we? This is like the same exact experience. This is so weird. Continue. I'm sorry.
We should have always had this conversation.
It's really bizarre. Yeah.
Well, so I don't know about you, but I hated that, and I didn't like it, and I wanted to. I just told the doctor I want to be off of this.
Yeah.
And I was just slowly weaned off, and I'm not on anything right now. CBD oil, I guess.
Nice.
Is the
I
only
just
thing
ordered some, actually. Yeah.
Have you tried it yet?
No, I got it from,
Okay.
I think the company is called New Leaf or something like that. It's one out of Colorado. But I was looking up a few different ones. And I don't necessarily need it at this point. It's more for, I have like the stomach problem still from the panic disorder. I developed like acid reflux and all that. So I'm thinking I'll use it after meals, something like that, where I can kind of like calm like anxious stomach. Type of thing, so we'll see. And then Chelsea, my wife, she has like depressive episodes and that type of thing. So I figured, why not give it a shot?
Yeah, give it a shot. I mean,
right?
Good luck. It's I hope it works. You know what I mean? It is this weird thing that everybody just says like, oh, it's good for this and it's good for
but
that.
Like no one really knows.
Yeah, how can it be good for absolutely everything? You know, what is this snake oil that you're selling me?
Everybody believes it though, so who knows?
I mean, so the thing that came out of it for me was horrible sleep, and I still sleep terrible, and I still have nightmares like all the time. It's like all
hence the nightmares.
Yeah,
EP.
I mean, it's all I dream about, or just terrible things.
Is it like death?
I do use it for sleep.
Okay.
Yeah. All the dreams are always just like I murdered someone or someone's murdering me
too.
or so.
Yeah. Horrible.
And I've become like since then just like a really light sleeper, and just I don't know. Before I could just pass out and crash and I could sleep for like 12 hours, and now it's just like I'll sleep for like a good like 4 hours, and then I'm awake or I'm in and out of sleep. And so I use it for that. I do find it helps me sleep just a little bit longer. Or I do feel like more groggy when I wake up from taking it. So it's just like I did get better sleep than if I didn't take the CBD oil.
Yeah, right. You notice something from it.
Yeah. So I think it kind of works.
Nice.
It's something.
Yeah. It's wild
helping.
though that you're able, like at this point, like you said, you were able to wean off Zoloft. Because I don't know, did you listen to the? I did an episode. I don't remember what number it was. It was just like a solo one. It's the only solo one I've done.
No.
So it's
no.
you. I'm not telling you to go listen to it, but if you want to, it's just fascinating because I don't remember how deeply I got into it in that episode, but I definitely laid out pretty much exactly what you just said in it. Where same exact thing for me, like 2012 when I developed panic disorder. It was like a daily thing, panic attacks, like totally debilitated me. I had to quit my job because I'd get the panic attacks on the job site, and it was like property management, like that type of thing. Like I wasn't the property manager. It was like kind of like maintenance, like whatever you call it, like jack of all trades. I'd be driving around property to property to like help with whatever needed at the time, and I'd be driving. And it was in Pottstown, so it was like 30 minutes from my parents' house where I was living at the time. And randomly it would just like onset, and I wouldn't be able to control it. And I would think I needed to go to the hospital, so I would just start driving. And like I would like call my boss. Sometimes I wouldn't even call my boss. Sometimes I'd just go, and then like an hour or two later, I'd call my boss and be like, "Oh, like shit, I forgot to tell my boss." And I ended up having a few conversations with them. They were super cool about it. They were like, "We understand." we want you to stay, that type of thing. And I was like, I literally can't. Like, I don't know what's going on, like this triggering mechanism in my brain, but it was killing me. Like, I couldn't eat. Same as you. I lost a ton of weight. I lost like 30 pounds, something like that, because I couldn't keep food down. Like, when I'd go to, especially food like steak or, like, I don't know, like anything thick, like anything meaty, or like even potatoes, like things that had substance, when I go to swallow, my throat would tighten up and it would feel like the food was caught in my esophagus.
Wow, yeah.
And then it would kind of, because I developed reflux from it then.
Right.
The reflux was literally, what do you call it? It was similarly to how when you eat peppermint or something like that, your sphincter at the bottom of your esophagus, it opens up. Like it kind of loosens it, you know? So since I had reflux, my sphincter was always opening. Yeah, it was just like spitting up acid all the time. So food would get caught there, and then I just constantly feel like there was something in my throat. It's like the nerve endings. So that lasted forever, lost a ton of weight, broke up with my girlfriend at the time, and it was partially because of that, and then partially just, you know, personal differences and all that. But that made it like my brain was on fire. Like, I remember specific conversations we'd be having about stuff, and I was just so anxious about random things that didn't matter in real life, but they felt like they mattered so much that I hyper-focused on them to the point of just ruining so many parts of the relationship and conversations and all that. So everything spiraled out, and when I eventually got onto Zoloft, same exact thing. It was my saving grace. Like, the daily panic attacks stopped and all that. But I noticed it numbed me. Like, after a few, and it was weird because when I tell people about this, there's like at least a month or a couple months where my memory is just completely, it's virtually gone. Like, if I looked at pictures from that time, I'd be able to tell you things I did, but like just off the top of my head, I can't think of like who I was or what I was doing or anything in like those few months. So same thing. You did the smart thing. I had like a moment of panic where I was like afraid it was, I don't know, like it wasn't like suicidal thoughts, but I was starting to get into that, like my brain was, whatever you want to call it, like those thoughts were entering my head, and it was never on the table. I was never thinking I'm going to kill myself, but the thought entered my head, and because I was so numb, the feeling that I thought I should be feeling to react to that wasn't there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you'd think, like, when that thought enters your head, your rational brain would be like, no,
Yeah.
don't do that. But that thought wasn't there, so it was freaky, and I just went cold turkey off of it, and then that was a whole nother ordeal where it was terrible of me to do that, and led to like a black hole. But afterward, when I came out of the black hole, it was similar to you. Like, it did what it needed to do to my brain, where it leveled me out, and I was no longer having those like daily panic episodes. Like, I was able to maintain some level of stability. So that was like 2013-ish in there. So it was like a year for me that I was in like the thick of it. Like, I still got anxiety and all that, like trailing afterward. Like I said, the tremors have continually gotten better over the years, but that period was just hell.
Yeah.
And like, same with you, I had no idea like how to communicate it with people. Like, if most people didn't understand, or like if you've never been through it, you don't have a framework for it. So it's like, even explaining it. I did a podcast with this girl, Gracie, a friend from Twitter recently. I haven't released it yet, I don't think, actually. But we were talking about how like there's differences in how people perceive things like anxiety and depression, because if you haven't actually experienced them at like a visceral level, you only relate to it with sadness and nervousness. It's like you relate to it like, oh, I've been really quote unquote depressed after my girlfriend broke up with me, or I've been really nervous before playing a show or giving a speech, or after this thing happened to me. And like, those things are so different than like the heightened neurological, whatever's going on in the chemistry that creates the depression and the anxiety and the panic. Like, there's like a different like spectrum almost, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyway, that was my whole. You don't even need to listen to the episode now. That's what happened.
That was it summed up.
That was the.
So
summary.
it wasn't times 2. It was times 16 or something.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah.
Right.
It was exactly. You got the expedited version of it, but it's crazy, man. That we both experienced.
I know.
That.
Well, and you're asking me, like what your life was like then and everything like that. I mean, I know exactly what you mean, because what was my answer? All I talked about was the medication I took. You know what I mean? Because I was going to say I'm just completely out of my mind, but it's at the same time you're completely within yourself. You know what I mean? Like, my brain was so utterly loud. The voice in my head was talking softly, but it seemed like screaming in my ear. It was it was just a strange time.
Were you with Amber at the time?
I was. Yeah, this was very, very early into our relationship, like real early. Yeah, I mean, I'm just really lucky because she was just incredible. Like just kind of, I don't know, just being there and sitting all that out through me, with me. And, I'm just really lucky that I was with her at that time. Cause it could have ruined my relationship, or it could have, just spoiled everything in my life. But it didn't. I just had a great person that I was with at the time. Man. Yeah.
That's so cool. So how long have you guys been together? Because you've been married for what, like 2-3 years now? How long has it been?
Yeah. I guess we were married. We've been married 3 years, and together, all together, like 9 or something like that.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
How's it going? I was gonna. It's so funny because you may not have gotten to this point in the episode with Kyle, but he brought up the whole. How funny the question of when people ask you how's married life, and it's this weird thing like when you've been dating someone or living with them for a long period of time, it's like that question you settle into the answers to that question a lot earlier. So like how has the relationship been for the past few years? Has anything changed with marriage?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what his answer was or anything like that, but because I didn't get there yet. Yeah. But yeah, when people do ask me that, it's just like I don't, it's the same. Like we had already lived together. I guess the big changes in our life and our relationship is more happening now. Mm-hmm. Like we got a house together. I mean, that's like a big, huge change, and a kid. I now have a 2-month-year-old. Yeah. So with married life. I mean, I guess what changes is just more and more responsibilities, start to build up. But I mean, from like when I got married, you know what I mean? If someone asked me like, how's married life like a month after I got married, it's just like, well, it's the exact same. Yeah. Nothing changed. Right. We just threw a party. That was the only thing that happened.
Party, yeah. Right.
We just threw a really great party. So yeah, I mean, the actual just, married life and being upper 30s, all that kind of stuff is like hitting me now.
Yeah.
in more recent times.
So now that you have the kid, I mean, this is all very, very, very recent, but have you, in the past, like obviously you knew you were going to have a kid for the past year or so. So like in this whole time period while this was all going on, have you noticed any kind of shift just in your mindset, I guess, as far as like your role in the music community and what you do? Because like similarly to what I was asking earlier, like if there was a change after the minor times and after Personnel when you got into songwriting, because it was kind of like a new chapter for you in a way. Like this is a much new chapter where now you're part. I don't even know what you got active bands you're in. You got Wives. You have is Legendary Divorce still playing?
Legendary Divorce is done. I'm doing a band called Desperate Living.
There's another one, Desperate Living.
Yeah, that's like my main thing. That's like my weekly thing. Wives is like more of a recording project. I mean, I put out something like recently, just in December, but I view that more like a recording project and solo stuff too. I put out something in November, but I that's like a recording project. Like that record was just with one other person, Matt Brash of the Wonder Years. Yeah. And us did that together. So as far as, like a change in what this like next chapter looks like coinciding with my music life, it's too early to tell. Mm-hmm. He's 2 months old. But I will tell you, like 2 months ago, I mean, there really is like a definite shift. Like it's just like before he was born and after he was born. You know what I mean? Like when somebody talks about it, like when a close one dies, it's like the same way. When someone's born, it is just like, wow, like this is just a whole entire
definitive
new thing. Yeah. And I'm just like before he was born, a good friend of mine that I did a recording project with called Ghost Away.
Oh, you can ask about
I'm gonna
that
try
too.
to just get all these in.
There's so many. There's so many.
Got to just name drop them all.
Yeah.
He was just kind of like, see you on the other side or something. Is like
is he a dad?
That's kind of what he said because he's a dad. Okay. Yeah, he's got a toddler. And it really just does feel like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I feel a part of this club now, you know? Like, it's just like I all of a sudden suddenly get, and I don't get it, you know what I mean? I'm saying, oh, I get it, but I don't get it. I'm figuring things out every single day and every single hour, you know, with this guy.
Yeah. But something clicks. Like, something clicked, and you're immediately like, this is different. Like, I am, like you said, now part of this club of people where, call it what you want, I guess. Maybe you just call it biological drive, if you can just say that, where it's like, okay, now you've brought this being into the world, and now this is the prime focus of your life. Like, whereas before you had Amber, you look to your wife, like, okay, you're like my whatever, you're my rock, you're my thing that is like the most intimately close to me, and then outside of that you might have your job or your passion or whatever it might be, and you kind of have like a spreadsheet almost of where your passion and your priorities are. But now with a baby, it's like all those other priorities take like almost like a second seat almost to it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even hearing when she was pregnant, it was suddenly just like, oh, everything became so much smaller. Like, every little problem or anything became so small and petty at that point, because it was just like, wow, none of that even matters anymore. Like, it totally doesn't matter. Like, this thing now matters, you know, and it's like the only thing that matters. And, you know, and I'm talking about with married life, there's all these responsibilities, but it's just like, when you're holding a baby in your arms, like, that is responsibility right there. That is the biggest, most crazy, insane responsibility you'll ever feel in your life.
Right.
It's like nothing else. I mean, you know, we got a house, and sure, I had felt these responsibilities of like, oh, I got to paint this room, or I got to fix this cabinet or something like that. But it nowhere compares to that feeling.
Right.
Of just, you know, I was just thinking about it so much when I just like one of these like past days in the few weeks where I just you know, I like had just woken up and he was crying, and she needed me to take him because she just like needed to do something. She's like, you know, can you just like hold him? And it's just funny. Like, it was funny being in just complete dreamland, you know, and then opening my eyes, and it's like, can you hold him? And she puts him in my arms, and just like, that's what I mean. Just like when he was put into my arms, it's just like, whoa, responsibility. Like, it's just like, wake up. Like, you're not dreaming anymore. You're not sleeping. You're not just like by yourself anymore.
Yeah.
Because you're right. Like, being married, you have a person, like a rock, you know, that you can lean on. But here's this rock now that you have to just like carry around and make sure it's not broken.
Oh,
and
I
make
love that.
sure
So
it's
poetic.
not like, I don't know. Yeah,
New song.
Stupid. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's crazy too, because to that point, when you're like, right, for me right now with Chelsea, like, we're newly married, and I don't know, we might try to have a kid in like the next year or two, we'll see. But for right now, and just when you're living with someone in general, and it's like a very prioritized relationship, if it's a good relationship and there is give and there's take and push and pull, with us, it's like I get to just be like, hey, I'm recording a podcast with Brian tonight, and she can come to me and say she's seen, I think it's her favorite podcast, My Favorite Murder. She's seen it live in Philly tonight. Yeah, so she had plans anyway, so she's like, oh, cool, I'm doing this tonight. And like, you get that feeling where it's not like, I guess depending on how your relationship looks like for some people I know, like when I was younger, like in the past, there were certain relationships I was in where it required a lot more attention, maybe because there was more insecurity or more, I don't know, just like neediness, whatever you want to call it. When you're younger, I guess that's a lot more apparent as a thing. But those nights then when you're making plans or have other things going on and it's a little bit more chaotic, that feels like a big deal maybe. And then when you're in a good relationship and things are solid, you have this give or take and you can kind of do your own thing. But then when you introduce a baby, it's like, now if you come out to make plans with me to podcast tonight, you're not just leaving Amber, like, she has to be with the baby. Mm-hmm. So that's like a whole new thing as far as like how you choose to schedule your time, like recording and writing and playing with your friends and going out. Like, this is like a new balancing act where it's not just, oh, I'm leaving Amber at home. Like, I'm leaving Amber with, like you said, the rock that she has to carry around. Right. Like, not like it makes it sound like it's the worst thing ever, but like, yeah, it's a responsibility and it has to. Yeah. Is that weird?
Yeah, well, I think that's what I meant by it, how it just became this whole new life, because you're right. It's just like before it was just like what do you want to do tonight? Where do you want to go eat? And we'd go out to that restaurant, or it's just, you know what I mean? There's no like second thought, like, how do we do that? You know?
Exactly. Right, yeah, you just do whatever you want. You're two functional adults. Yeah.
Exactly. So, so now it's just to go to a restaurant, it is like a huge deal. I have the utmost respect for every parent that ever existed in the universe, because I now like just truly understand, at least for the past 2 months of having a 2-month-year-old, I now truly understand how just, how precious, time is and everything, and sleep and all these things, because now, if I want to paint that room or fix that cabinet, or if I want to, I mean, like when we, like the first week or something that he was home, like our like shed door was open. It took me like 3 days to close it, like something like that. Like it was just like, oh my God, like every little thing is now a big project.
Yeah.
Because we have a newborn, so everything is, all right, he's crying, like calm down, or like, all right, he's hungry, all right, we have to feed him, and you know what I mean. So everything's like so centered around him. So you don't have like that time to do anything.
Yeah, I loved your Facebook status. That was so perfect when you wrote to every parent that I've ever said that I'm busy. I'm sorry. Because it is just like a different kind of busyness. Like I was telling you this before we started to record. I've told you this before. Like you are probably the most active musician I know personally. Like you've been involved with literally more projects than I can count or even find online. There's just so many to try and track down. You've been doing this for decades now, and like you're always reaching your hands into different pots and trying new things, and like that's amazing. But like when you take that busyness of your schedule and then you try to match it with having a kid, it's like a whole new, like you can't even, like you're busy as a parent. It's like you can't take a nap without knowing where the kid is and all that. Like your most like you said with the shed, like your most basic human function is like weighing on your brain capacity or whatever. Like I felt the same way with a lot of friends of mine that have had kids in recent years, where like in those early times, because I was, a lot of my friends started having kids when I was like 18, 20-ish, because most of my friends are older, like you. And I was always like kind of that douchey young adult who didn't really get it. You know what I mean? Like in my mind, I'm just like, who cares? Like, you got a kid, like, cool, bring your kid to whatever.
Right.
It's like such an ignorance of how it actually works.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I don't even think it matters your age. I mean, 2 months ago, I was the same exact way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you're...
I didn't, fully get it. Yeah, I mean, the busy, a lot of like parents that I've been talking to they've kind of reassured me that like your busy just becomes a new busy. You know what I mean? And that's how it works with anything in life, I suppose. You don't have to have like a kid, to realize that, or go through any other change. I mean, it just becomes like your new way of living.
Yeah.
That's all. And like you said, where I'm making this sound like it's such like a terrible thing. I mean, there's many positives to having a child.
If anyone's listening who thinks that that's the like way it's being like, they're idiots. They should.
It should be talked about this way, because so many people talk about the maternity leave, the paternity leave being like this honeymoon period, and it's really not. It's a lot of work. It's so much work. Going back to work.
180.
I haven't gone back to work yet, but when I go back to work, it's gonna be a relief. Like I'm like, in a weird way, for the first time in my life, looking forward to going back to work, because it's just like, it'll be a breather. Right.
Well, we live in this like such hindsight minded culture, and I guess it's maybe always been like this, so I don't think it's anything new, but just like how people, like older people, like your friends who have already had kids that you're friends with and that you're communicating with, there's just that tendency, no matter what stage of life you're in, there's that tendency for those people then who are talking to you to say, just enjoy these years, Brian, enjoy this time. And it's like, you think this on every level. It's like teenagers, well, I guess not teenagers to like preteens, but it really starts like your early 20s. Like you'll say that to kids in high school. Like I know I have a friend named Rena, and she's in college now, but I became friends with her when she was a freshman in high school, I think. And she's one of these like troubled kids, and you know, at that time she was going through a lot of stuff, and some of it was serious stuff, some of it was your typical teenage stuff that feels like the end of the world. And we'd have these conversations, and I would sound like that, but I'd always have to reel back and just be like, I know, like I remember what it was like. I know it feels like the end of the world right now, but it's not. Like you're gonna get through it. So there's that kind of like, no matter where we're at, it's like, oh, like I remember before I was married, or I remember before I had a kid, or before I had a house. There's like that weird cultural mindset that people put on instead of just embracing people where they are. Like if you just had a baby, and it's obviously a beautiful, wonderful thing, but it's also a very, like you said, it's a trying period. So for people to be like, oh, you should just be enjoying it, it's like vacation, like that's just like screw off. Like that's like, come on.
No, it really is. It really is like screw you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, all through your life, you're right. Your life is just always ahead of you, but like in it, you never think that. Like you always think your life is behind you or something like that. It's incredible. Yeah, you're constantly, every time there's a change in your life, you're always reminded of that.
Yeah.
That it's like, no, you were dead wrong. Like there's still like plenty more, to this life.
Absolutely. So do you have like, obviously just on the topic of parent friends and all that, you're at a phase in your life where a lot of the people you did grow up with in the local scene, they have families and all that. Like how many, if you had to guess, like the people that you've gotten to know over the past 20 years or 15 years, however long playing music, are a lot of those people local still? Did a lot of them move away? Have you lost touch with a lot of them? Like how many of your friends are at that same or similar stage where they're having kids and local? Like do you keep in touch with a lot of them?
Yeah, definitely. I guess I sort of mentioned when I was talking about when I was a teenager and met a lot of my friends that were musicians and stuff. They're still all of my close friends.
That's
they're
great.
Still like my close group, knit of friends. And yeah, they're scattered around. There's people like in various places. A bunch of them are also still local too. I mean, yeah, it's just like we're all in our upper 30s, so in different places. But yeah, a lot of them have kids. Maybe the majority of them have kids too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely like still keep in touch. I mean, playing in bands honestly is the best way to keep in touch with your friends.
Just like this, it's an excuse to be like, oh, we can get together.
Yeah, and doing a podcast, which I also do, is like an excuse to hang out with your friends.
Right.
You need to find those excuses. I think like the later you get in your life. I mean, my mom has like the same group of friends that she's always had. In high school and just growing up, like it was always just like this rare night out that she would have like once every like 2 years or something like that, where she gets to hang out with her friends,
Yeah.
So I feel really lucky to be doing music to where I get to have that much more often.
Yeah. That's how the podcast has been for me. It's just, again, it's like an excuse to hang out. Like how did you end up, we can just kind of tag this into there. Like how did you end up starting Volcano Vinyl? Was that for like a similar reason? Were you kind of just like, hey, Brian number 2, like, do we want to do this to kind of like hang out, or was there more like a purpose-driven element to it, or how did that whole thing start?
It started because the other Brian really was just like, I want to start a podcast.
Mm-hmm. Like, what's this other Brian's last name? Sorry.
So his name is Brian Schmutz.
Okay.
And he was the singer of the band Inkling.
Okay.
And
perfect.
he played bass in Legendary Divorce.
Cool.
He was in Personnel for a little bit of a time period. So
he's a long time Brian.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, all my friends were long time, people. Yeah, he wanted to do one. He had a couple ideas, and I don't know what sparked it, but I just had that idea. I was just like, what if it was just you play a record and you talk, while the record is playing, like almost like this like DVD commentary like type of thing, or I was going to say Mystery Science Theater, but like we're not like that.
It's similar
funny,
though. It's like a similar vibe.
It's a similar vibe. It's that kind of vibe. You know what I mean? And he listens to a lot of podcasts, and he's just kind of like, I can't really think of a podcast that does that. Mm-hmm. Like there's a lot of music podcasts that play and they talk about an album,
right?
But it's not just like this discussion while it's playing, like in real time. Like if like the bass player plays some sort of bass line, and like you talk about it right then and there because it's happening right then and there.
Very experiential.
So he's just like, that's a great idea, and for me too, I think the reason I did think of it was really solely because it was just like I was trying to think of just like, what do I really love? The same way as when you asked me to be on the podcast, it's just like, what the heck am I going to talk about? Like, all I like is, I like music and I like movies and, and I'm interested in like space exploration, but outside of just like, just being a dork about music, like I really can't like talk about anything, for 2 hours
with
or something like that.
Confidence,
with confidence and with I mean, you have these intellectuals on your show, and and it's just like, what the heck am I going to talk about? So
that's me every time I interview. I'm like, I'm out of my depth. Like every person I interview.
Do you feel like intimidated?
Oh my god, yeah. I did a podcast. He'll probably never hear this. With a philosopher called Massimo Pilucci. He was like I don't even know, like the 14th, 15th episode I did, something like that. And it was by happenstance that I even got in touch with this guy. I mean, I love his work, but I'm not a philosopher. Like I think philosophically. I think in ideas. I'm a fan of a lot of philosophy, but I'm definitely like I flunked my first philosophy class. Like I am not a good philosopher as far as like like logic type of reasoning and all that, like the math of it almost. So when I had this guy on, we were talking. It was such a weird thing because I think it was the first time on this show that right away into talking to him, I realized I was out of my depth, and I was trying to. And I was really still pretty new. I'm still new, but I was especially new to podcasting then. And it was one of those things, I let my nerves get the best of me. It wasn't a bad interview. I didn't feel like it was awful, but in the moment, I was sweating and just like, I couldn't catch a stride because I was like, man, how am I supposed to keep up with this guy? Like what he's talking about? And I think a lot of people get that intimidation in general, like when you dive into any kind of topic, which is almost my knee-jerk, my thought, I think, as to why a lot of people get so angry about politics specifically. It's not so much that they're passionate about their politics, but it's that they're actually insecure. Like, I think a lot of people have very strong feelings on political stuff because obviously it's hot and we all have our beliefs and that are like ingrained in us almost. But I think people get so mad because when someone else starts to argue with them, there's like almost like a sense of inadequacy right away where if someone hits you with a really good point, like something you haven't really thought of, and you're emotionally invested in it, your knee-jerk response is always to just be like, fuck you. It's never to be like, oh, thank you for enlightening me with this point and like explaining that for me. It's always to project outward, how you don't understand something. And then you double down. It's like you go on Google. It's like, I'm going to quick Google answer that I know is going to reinforce what I think. But I think a lot of people just we're talking about like the busyness of life. Like you just had a kid, you're married, you have your passions that you spend all your time on. It's like most people, when it comes to social issues and political issues and really just any given topic of expertise, like everybody has their opinions on everything, but very few people have the actual time to like study the source material. So then when you're in situations where you're forced to have those conversations, it really irks a lot of people, It still irks me. Like I still all the time catch myself in situations where someone will say something I know, like I have a business course I'm taking right now at school, and the professor is very conservative. Like it's like sort of business economics, that wing of academia is typically right leaning in general, whereas like social sciences are much more left leaning.
Right.
And he is just he inserts these conservative talking points in the most subtle, awkward ways that have nothing to do with what we're learning about. And it's like in the middle of him teaching. So like he'll be saying a point, and then he'll say a talking point, and immediately my brain is thinking, I want to raise my hand to like, go toe to toe with him right now. And sometimes I'm sure I could kind of cover a little bit of ground, but then I'm thinking, this dude's in his 60s. He fundamentally disagrees with me on whatever this thing is that he said. And even though he's wrong, like I know on a deep visceral level that he's wrong when he made a comment this week about climate change. He said something about the like Trump's tweet where Trump mentioned, he said something like, it's cold outside, where's global warming?
Right.
He basically like referenced that tweet in passing, and my gut reaction was to be like, that's not how it works. Like, that's weather. That's not climate.
Right.
But in my mind, I was like, wait, I know, like, in my mind, I'm going off of the, like, whatever, the 97% of scientists, that consensus, and it's sort of that point. I've studied that. I've looked into it. I kind of have an understanding of, like, where those numbers and those epidemiological studies come from, where, like, kind of gather multiple consensuses from scientists, but I'm not versed in it. So, like, I hear that, and I get mad. And the only reason I'm mad is because I know if I raise my hand, I don't have, like, the full confidence that I'd be able to go toe-to-toe with
You're
them
not
on.
one of those scientists.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like that inadequacy, that insecurity is what's really making me mad. It's not that he said that thing, because you could say a million things I disagree with.
But he's not one of the scientists either.
He's not, but it's like, I think that's the just personal reaction.
Yeah,
Like I said, I could probably hold my ground or whatever, like on a point like that, but because I'm not an expert, my insecurity is the thing that becomes the glaring push to become emotional. You know what I mean? So I think it's cool. Like we've talked about this in our little Instagram back and forth, like how self-aware you are to be like, okay, well, this isn't something I spent a lot of time in, so like let's not cover these areas, because if it's not something you spend a lot of time in, like why? Like if you have an audience, if people are listening to it, it's like, okay, I don't want to, like, just like on Twitter, I spend every day on Twitter, someone with like a blank avatar and 6 followers, they have like the same voice that someone with 50,000 followers does. So it's like, why would I listen to what this person's saying? You know what I mean? It's like, but it's cool that you have that awareness to like your interests and where your expertise, because this is your expertise. Like this is very, very few people are as experienced and well versed in music as you are. So it's been really cool getting to talk about all of it.
That's cool. Yeah, I hope so. I mean, like being here is like it's like a therapy session too, because I also don't like talking about myself. You know what I mean? And even when I hear a podcast or an interview or something with anyone, and with a musician or something, I usually don't like it. I usually just don't like hearing somebody talk about themselves. I don't know. It just comes off to me as like gloating or something like that.
Well, because a lot of those interviews, they focus on those highlights. Like if this was that type of interview, I would have gone back to all the stuff you were saying about touring. Like you brought up Under Oath. I loved Under Oath growing up. Like if I wanted to make it that kind of like, I don't know, like rah, like how cool my friend Brian is interview, I'd be like, tell me all about that experience. Like, let's dive into like all this cool shit you did, which I am interested in. I think it's awesome. Like, just like you said, it's kind of like the reverse thing. Like, if it was me talking about that type of thing, I'd feel similarly self-conscious. But like when it's someone else, I think it's really cool. It's like that would have been cool for me to hear that. But I think even knowing you and like knowing what I am interested in most when I hear podcasts is like hearing about you talk about your anxiety and like these transitions of your life. Like that's what I find most helpful, I think, when people are talking about themselves. I don't know.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's hard, and that's exactly why when I was just like, I'll do a podcast, I'll just do it hanging out with a friend, smoking weed and talking about music, because that's a very comfortable place for me. Yeah. Although it becomes a little less uncomfortable, a little more uncomfortable once you get mics in front of you and you just roll tape on it all.
It's not natural,
and it's like,
altogether.
Yeah. But that kind of just the same thing as performance. It puts it on the edge. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like
just like
you're definitely gonna say stupid crap. You know what I mean? Or you're definitely gonna look back on it and just be like, I was such an. I mean, I'm talking about like this newborn, like 2 months of. Well, I mean, when he's a year or 2 years or something. You know what I mean? I'm just gonna be like, I was so naive then. Yep. I knew nothing.
Yep. Kyle and I talked about that a little bit as well. Just how it's funny thinking there's the potential that our kids will have the ability to hear what we're recording here, and just like the thought, especially if they hear it in like their angsty teen years, it's like, oh man, dad was such an idiot. Like, what was dad talking about here? It's just such a, like, we all have our kind of like frames or lenses, I should say, like how we see ourselves when we look back over time. But it's cool. It's cool that you have like the chance to open up. Like when you podcast with Brian with Volcano Vinyl, like how often I've listened to a couple of them, and like most of it's like central to exactly like you're going through the song. You kind of riff a little bit on history of the musicians and stuff like that. But how often do you get to kind of trail off and shoot the shit about like memories between the two of you, or back in the day type of stuff? Like, do you get to do that when you're recording?
Oh yeah, I mean, we're up to 200 some episodes, so it's happened in there without a doubt. And because it's us hanging out and it's the way we hang out now, like it's weird, like having a documented hangout now with your friends.
Yep, it's super weird.
It's very strange. So yeah, we've gone down those routes. It's just if it comes up in conversation, the show is really loose and just like I said, I mean, we smoke like while we're doing the episode, so it's just like it's really shooting the shit like to the extreme, too much, really.
I love that.
But yeah, that's the way we wanted
all
to.
about.
Exactly, that is what the podcast is about. We wanted it to sound like the same way as if you're hanging out with your friend and talking about the music. Because there's podcasts out there that are like, they could talk about this classic album and they could give you all of like the facts and the history and like all the detail, and tell you just. We could just read Wikipedia to you, but the whole purpose of it is like, no, let's do one that is the same way it would be if you're hanging out with your friend and listening. You know what I mean? You're saying, oh, this part's awesome, or just like, oh, that reminds me of this. Yeah, I mean, we go on all kinds of different tangents. I don't know. We've talked about everything at this point. Again, with like 200 plus episodes.
Yeah,
I mean,
you cover it all.
I don't know what we haven't covered at this point.
Well, that is the best part about doing podcasts in that format, as far as getting out of it what you want, as far as a hangout. Because I thought about that just starting to produce this one, insofar as a lot of the most popular podcasts out there are like This American Life and NPR and like all these really produced styles, or like it's a heavy production. And like when I thought about it, I was like, even like from an interview standpoint, like if I'm gonna interview experts in a given field, like how structured do I want to make it? And like as I've gone on recording it, I'm just like the people who are choosing to listen to this with their free time, like, I don't know what they see about me that they like, but they must like something. Because, like, for me, just like you said, I'm very, I guess, self-critical. Like, even, like, going back when I edit this podcast, I'll be thinking, oh, man, like, I ranted too much here. I said too much about this here. I think about that stuff, and it's like, for whatever reason, like, I have to come to terms with the fact that some of the people listening are listening because they like my personality. And like, if I had gone down that road of like trying to make it more of a produced, like you said, reading off Wikipedia, like something in lockstep with the content, that's not why people listen to podcasts. Like they listen to those, whether it's Shit Town or there's the new ones about the Hart family. It's called like Heartbreak, or what the hell is it called? Broken Hearts. It's like a new, really popular one. It's like a storytelling type of thing, and that stuff's really popular among like a specific audience. But I know like most of the podcast people that people that I know who listen to podcasts, they listen to like a comedian, just like have other comedians on. They listen to like some entertainer, have other entertainers on. It's just conversational. Like it's just nice to get that window, for the listener into your actual thoughts, your actual feelings and opinions on stuff. So yeah, it's super cool.
Yeah, and because I like and made it a part of my life, like a band or something like that. I wanted to do something that I enjoy doing. Right. You know what I mean? There was no other reason to do it.
It's not just like it's cool.
Any other band too. It's just like if I'm not like getting enjoyment out of this, I'm not going to do it, and it's not going to be a part of my life.
Yeah.
It's been like a wild ride. So we've been at it for 2 years. We took a really long break. We like are just getting it going. Again for season 3.
Amazing.
It was a twice weekly podcast.
I was gonna say you were doing it twice a week. That's so insane.
For season 3, we're going to once a week now.
There you go.
With the baby, the new way we're doing it is we record several episodes in a night, usually 4. So that's our new plan. The way I've worked it all out, if you will, with the baby is I'll get together with him once a month, essentially. So record 4 episodes and put them out weekly.
Yeah.
And then, that's
great.
It's just going to be easier on my lifestyle. You know what I mean? Because I already have a weekly band practice.
Yeah.
You know, so
that's already like 2 nights potentially that you're going to be away from the baby.
Yeah,
it's a lot of time.
That's a lot of time.
Yeah.
You know, to for a newborn. So
yeah.
So that's the way we've worked it out, and I think it's going to work. Again, we've just started this. We just recorded our first 4 episodes of season 3 2 nights ago. So we'll see.
Cool, man.
We'll see how that goes.
Awesome. Yeah, looking forward. I'll plug all this stuff in the podcast. Like,
you don't have enough room.
I'm not. It's like you read my mind. Literally, right before you said that, I was thinking, like, man, it's gonna be a fun intro to do. Like, put all this together. We can't go this whole time without talking about your most recent album, Hawks. So I mean, like, is this at this point? Like, I know you said you're still kind of doing Wives as far as like recording type stuff, and you said what's it called, not Legendary Divorce,
Desperate Living.
Desperate Living, and then you kind of what's the other one that we were just talking about? There's so many, my brain is like broken. The other one that you said stopped recently,
Ghost Away,
with the girl singer, what was her name?
Well, that was Legendary Divorce.
That was Legendary Divorce.
Yeah.
Okay, so like that. I'm trying to think, what's the other one? You had another one going on too, though.
I can't keep track. I don't know.
Hold on, let me see if I wrote it down. What was
other bands that I've done recently?
What? Oh, what's? I don't even think I knew this one. What's Sun Opus?
What's yeah, that's another one.
Yeah, like what the hell? So I wrote it down and I was like, I haven't heard anything of this one yet. So yeah, so you can get into that, and then you just kind of like dovetail out of that. Like, what's your primary? Like, what are you working on right now? So go ahead.
So Legendary Divorce kind of turned into Desperate Living a little bit in a way. I mean, well, not really, I guess, but I'm playing with my friend Tim, who I've played with in the Minor Times and Inkling, and this latest Wives record I did with just him. It was just the 2 of us. We've been playing music together for like 20 years. He's just one of my best friends, and he's also a new dad, and it's just, it's really cool. Wives is a thing that I don't even go by under my name. I use like this pseudonym. It's Nico Warhol. So usually, even up until recently, really, this EP, I never really mentioned that it was me doing it. You know what I mean? But at this point, it's just kind of like whatever. I still keep it under that name. But like someone listening to this podcast, like maybe then already knows I do that band. So
yeah,
it's
like if
whatever.
they follow your personal stuff. Or whatever.
Then they already. So it doesn't matter. Sun Opus was a band. Really, it's 2 of my friends that they played in Personnel, and Charlie in that band, I've played with him in multiple things. He played in the Elk Band, which is like my backing band for solo stuff, and we just like jam a lot. You know what I mean? The other guy is Ryan Zamero, who was in Personnel, and he's in Vacationer now. It was kind of just like this. We're just like jamming and messing around all the time. And I wanted to make a record because I've never done it before. Records take a long time to make.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like I was talking about the Nightmares thing, and I'm trying to put the timeline because it's like, well, that could have come out like, I don't even know, like 2 years after maybe the Anxiety Experience, or you know what I mean? Like I don't know. So the records just take like such a long time. When it comes out, it's always just like, hey, I like your new record. And to me, because I'm always moving on to the next thing, it's like, oh yeah, that's like the old thing I was doing like last year.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
But it just came out.
Hard to keep up. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to make a record that was just very immediate. When you're writing a song with people, when you first write a song, there's this feeling of just of it's exciting, and you know what I mean. And when you start like practicing it and rehearsing it and fleshing all the things out, in a way, it can kind of lose what it originally had. You know,
gets too neat, gets too tidy.
Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to make a record that was untidy. I wanted to make a record, like the Stones did in the 70s or something, where it's just like all we have is studio time.
Yeah.
And that's it. They just go in and make the next record.
Yeah, yeah.
I wanted to make a record like that. So that's what that was. It was like it was very loose ideas of songs, and a couple of the songs on the record are literally just like what we played then and there. Like nobody knew what was going to happen next, and that's awesome. What ends up on the record, and that's, I don't know, that's really exciting to me. I never made a record like that. So that was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was like a one-off thing? Like, is it kind of just like that's in the ether? And
yeah, I mean, we're talking about doing another record. Again, things take forever, so I don't know how long it will take.
Yeah, yeah.
But we're talking about it. We've talked about adding Danny from Good Old War. We've been like jamming with him a little bit.
Oh, I love them.
Because we don't really have a bass player in the band, so we were talking about him playing bass. Like when we've been jamming, he's been playing bass. So
is Good Old War still active? Now?
I'm pretty sure, yeah. And Danny has a solo thing. He goes under Danny Black. He does a solo thing.
Yeah, they're amazing.
Yeah, he's like the most incredible guitar player I've probably ever met in my life, and the dude is insane.
Yeah, and just like their chemistry, like how I don't even know how they do it. It's so tight, like in that style range. You know what I mean? It's like
well, you know how they do it is and maybe what Danny gets out of jamming with us is it's the total opposite. They practice like 6 days a week.
Oh my god, it shows. Yeah, it definitely shows. Yeah, it's crazy. So so right at this point with Hawks that just came out, is this something that, again, sort of like this conglomerate of all these projects you have going on? Is it kind of like you've been working on it for a while, this is your solo type record, and you just released it, and it is what it is, you might play it here and there? Or is it like a focus? Like, are you actually booking shows, like solo shows to promote it? Or like, how is it like prioritized right now on your musical list?
It is weird because it is something that I just kind of put out. I mean, the solo shows, honestly, I wouldn't have played so many if it wasn't for you. Right? I barely played any shows, and then just like, like every month or a couple months, like you would just be like, hey, you want to play this show?
We did play so many random shows.
Plays very random stuff.
You would do the same to me though too. You invited me to a bunch
of course.
Random ones too.
That's how it works.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, I'm always writing songs like all the time.
Yeah.
It's what I'm doing all the time outside of, my regular like band practice. Like I'll just be at home and I'll just, again, the sky's the limit with the chords. So I'm just like a couple chords and melody over top of it. And,
right, let's go.
All right, here's a new song. So I've always got like songs like just like buried in the wing. And Hawks was like kind of an interesting album. So I did a record with, I mentioned my backing band, the Elk Band. We made our second record, and it's been sitting there like for so long.
Oh my god, I forgot about that. That's not out yet.
It's not out yet.
Oh my god, that was years ago.
It's been sitting, for like a couple years.
Oh my god.
And it's just been like being mixed and mastered and remastered. Mm-hmm. So I was just like, while all this is being worked on, I'm gonna work on this other just record with Matt Brash. So the Wonder Years just go in his basement, and the two of us will just make another record.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure how it would work out. If Elk Band would finish first, I'll put that out first and then follow it up really quickly.
Yeah.
So the way it works out, it's just like the Hawks one finished first, and I was just like, all right, I'll just put this out. The Elk Band record is officially done.
Wow. Congrats.
Thanks. I really just have to set like a release date. I don't really know. I might say March 1st. I hate that I went down on record on that right now, but
I'll edit it out.
Maybe let's just go with it.
Are you guys gonna actually play? Because I know Nick, he lives in Virginia now, right?
He does. Yeah. So the guitar player now lives in Virginia. So yeah, I mean the solo stuff is just never really been a thing that I played out with like very often. And still is just kind of that way. I mean, if I get asked to play a show, I'll probably do it. I haven't done one in a long time, though, to be honest, so I don't know how
you would be the same, so
comfortable I would even be doing it. Yeah, maybe the two of us should
comeback.
Should do a comeback and Anxiety Brothers.
Oh my god, the Anxiety tour. That's great, man.
yeah, because I don't know, I'm terrible at promoting, and like I said, I'm always moving on to the next thing. So every time an album's finished, I just throw it up, and I'm just like, here
Whoever
it is.
Wants it, here it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I'm not making money off of it. It's just my own sanity in a way. Like the solo record really is therapy. I really do it in a very like selfish reason. Like, you know what I mean? It's the songs just kind of just like keep coming, and I just when I lay it out there and put it out there, it's nice when it becomes something like concrete. You put that like emotion or that thought just like on a record. It's now a song or something. It suddenly becomes like it's not yours anymore. You know?
Yeah.
So and that just makes
you don't know where it came from.
Better. Yeah.
Yeah, it just kind of came to you. It's almost like it was never yours. It's like you were just like the apparatus it chose. It's like I always think that like when it's similarly to your song. I remember like the first song that I really like attached myself to, that a lot of our crew kind of did, was your song "I'm Not Crazy" from back in the day. It was very catchy. It was just like a sing along. Like whenever you played it, we'd have everybody singing along in the room. And that song for me for a long time was "Watch You Sleep," and it was like everybody kind of knew that song whenever I played it. And it's just fascinating thinking about like what makes a good song and what makes like a song click with people. When I think about, for me at least, when I wrote "Watch You Sleep," I don't remember, like, it's not like I consciously, like, the melody just came to me. I didn't, like, try to, you know what I mean? It wasn't, like, a workshopped thing that I spent hours trying to sort out in my head. It just literally, at one point, I sang the melody, and then it came out, and then I refined it, and that was it. And it's interesting how, like, those certain melodies just resonate with people, you know? It's not like you said, like, this is for your own gratification. Similarly to me, it's not like we're making money and we're not rock stars off of it, but there's certain songs that people resonate with and they connect with. And it's weird as a writer because you write it and it's like you take ownership. It's my thing. I spent time coming up with this, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know where it came from. It just kind of came out, you know?
Yeah.
And it's cool that, like, for you, it keeps coming out, you know? Like, because for me, I almost, in a lot of ways, and I've talked about this a little bit on the show and with friends, I feel like the podcast replaced it for me in a lot of ways. Like, as far as that therapeutic outlet for creativity or whatever. I mean, also, the work I do on social media now replaced a lot of it as well. Like, just the kind of creative energy, I guess. Like, my job is very creative now. So that output just, you know, it kind of has found itself in the new homes. And I in part, I regret it. Because in part, like, listening back to you talk about all these projects you have going on, like, I haven't picked up my guitar in a long time. Like, it's not like I don't want to. It's not like I never will again. But it's like the priorities have shifted, and that like need to get something out. Like, I've definitely found, but even just like how I rant on the podcast, like it kind of comes out in this way now. Like, I really enjoy that part of me. But it's really cool that, like, you're still at this point, 20-something years later, like, connected to that output, you know, like, it's still producing energy, you know. It's really, really neat. Do you think you're just going to keep doing it into, like, the unforeseeable future?
I can't see myself stopping. I mean, I can see myself slowing down, like, absolutely for sure. But yeah, I don't know. I can't see I can't see songs stopping. I mean, maybe songs stopping. I don't know. I mean, like, everything just kind of started when I just first started just, like, writing, you know, like, just words I'm talking about, like in high school or something. Just writing down my thoughts is kind of what started it, and that's what I just, like, still do all the time. Like, I still just, like, keep, like, while I'm at work or something like that. Like, if something just, like, comes, you know, I have a notepad or something. So I don't know. I think I'll always do that, and of course, just with life experiences and things, like, I'm always going to be kind of, like, inspired, and I don't know. I guess as long as I have, like, thoughts and feelings, I don't know. I can't see it not coming about.
Do you think that's unique though? Because I mean, like, most people that you know, they like you're in kind of a weird, unique position because you know a lot of musicians that have stayed true to the scene as well. Which a lot for my friends personally, I'd say at this point, if I were to, like, tally together all the musician friends I've had since, like, 2006 to now, like, easily 99% of them don't do it anymore. Like, or maybe not 99, 90, 95, somewhere like that. You know what I mean? Like, they grew up, they got into other stuff, whether they kind of fell off the map or they got married or whatever, but they don't write or go to shows or participate in this whole community and output of energy. Like, do you find that it's a unique thing in you?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I don't know anyone who's in as many bands as me or something.
Me neither.
Yeah, so I suppose that's unique.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You're so humble. You're just like, whatever. No, this is just just me.
I just don't know the answer, because I only know me.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
That's true. Cool, man.
Yeah. There's your deep philosophical thing. I only know me. That could be a whole topic. I also the one class I dropped out of at community college was a philosophy class because
really?
I just felt like it wasn't going anywhere. All it did was ask more questions.
Wow, man, that's poetic. We relate. Yep. It's just funny because I mean, like it's I like how you answer those questions. It's very true to who you are. A lot of people, myself included, the reason I'm drawn to philosophy in the first place is that I like the questions and I like the answers. But it's cool when someone can actually accept the question for what it is and like let it be without your analysis. Because like there's sometimes that like it's like the questions of life and death or afterlife or the meaning of life or whatever. It's like those are fun questions to tamper with if you're high or if you're with certain friends that are kind of pulling it out of you. But at the end of the day, you want to be able to sit with those questions and be okay with the why. Like you don't need an answer for everything. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. And I would say like, I don't know, 3% of the world feels that way or something. Right. You know what I mean? Because I think everyone, I don't know, everybody has. So many people they follow a religion in this world, and I think for a lot of people, religion is that answer. They can go why, and then they can go, oh, this is why.
Yeah, it's like a light switch. You just like flick the switch on, and it's like, okay, I'm good. I know that's the answer.
Yeah. So there is people like me that is okay with just the question being out there unanswered. I don't know. I am okay with it. I don't need religion to ask me to have that answer for me. That would be a whole nother topic, a whole nother podcast between us, because that is a conversation we've never gotten into.
Yeah, it'd be a fun one. We could jump down that rabbit hole at some point.
Yeah, we'll do it off mic sometime.
Yeah, I'd love to, man. Of course. Before we jump off, I didn't think of this before, but now I'm thinking about it, because we didn't really get into all the crazy stories that we have about like just random shows and stuff we played. So like thinking back, we can do this twofold. This is like a stereotypical podcast question. Like let's start here. What do you have, like a standout favorite show in any band that you've played that was like an aha moment or like a very impactful moment for you?
Wow, no.
They all just kind of blend.
The personnel shows really, really blend. That was certainly in a haze, similar to the Volcano Vinyl show.
Yeah.
That all those tours were in a haze. I don't know. It's like I said, the playing to an audience that is just like hush and you hear a pin drop, and then playing to an audience of thousands. Like they're different in their ways, and they're both exciting in their own way. I don't know. I get the same exact excitement out of both things.
Yeah.
I don't know. And I really, really enjoyed touring. Touring was like an incredible experience in my life, and the idea of just like music that I created and helped create with friends of mine, like, and taking it to a far off distant land was always really exciting, and like something I definitely fell hard for. Like I really, really loved, because that was really cool. So, but no, I mean a specific show. I don't know. Between you and I, like specific shows that come to mind.
Let's reel it back locally.
We played some weird shows. Some of those are coming to mind. Like we played a show in that weird like. It wasn't a museum. It was like
I know what you're talking about. I was going to bring it up. The archive.
In Lansdale. Yes. There's the alligator was there, and like we played on this stage that was really as big as just like our 2 feet that we stood on, and we were surrounded by. But that place was a huge fire hazard.
So weird. Yeah. Oh my God. How did that? Is it still around?
I don't know, but that's all the place is books.
Yep.
Just books, tons of paper
and disorganized.
And you can't. Walk around like there's weird corners. I mean, seriously, if one book lit on fire,
the whole thing,
we would have all been dead. It's crazy. I don't know. And we played. I don't know. We just played so many weird shows.
I know.
So many strange strange shows.
When I tell people the story of the archive, no one believes me until I show them my profile picture from like 7 years ago.
The alligator picture, holding up the alligator.
I'm like, there was an alligator just at this show, and the dude let me
with
hold
like
it.
packing tape around its mouth or something like that.
Well, he did that, yeah. Like it was like duct tape. Like he's like, oh, you want to hold it? Like it's, and I'm thinking, I know nothing about alligators. I'm like, is this duct tape really gonna hold this thing's mouth shut as I like saddle it over my shoulder? That was a good time. That was your show, wasn't it? You invited me to that one, I think.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was it really? Are you sure?
I think so. I don't remember having a contact for that place.
I'm remembering it the other way.
I don't.
Maybe I just want to.
Either way, it's like it's a great memory. It's a great memory. There were so many weird hole in the walls, like those types of shows where you'd invite me or I'd invite you, and we'd get there and there'd be like 5 people there, and it's in the middle of nowhere, and we have to set up the PA, and like it's really just like me and you and like Amber and like maybe like one friend or something. You know what I mean? It's like we're just like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, and that's tough, coming from the personnel or something like that. Like it's tough. It's just like, wait a minute, I have to like build this entire thing up myself, and I'm a humble guy, and I don't have the energy to do it, or I don't like to self-promote or anything. So how do you do that? And I guess that's why I just don't play that many shows, because it's just like, I don't like to self-promote. I don't like to talk about myself.
Well, you had for years like a whatever you want to call it, a ringleader or someone who was I've referenced Kyle a bunch of times, but when I did the podcast with Kyle Shiva, we talked about this a bunch, just how with Former Bell and with other bands, like with my band, or bands, I should say, like he likes or always has liked the idea of like he just gets to come, he gets to write or partake in the band, but like he can promote it, like he can post it on his Facebook, but it's not like the immense pressure of building the brand for the band. It's like when you're like a front person, or a band, like a collective, I guess, but it's usually like one person or 2 people that have like the main pool, and it's like that's the promotional aspect of it, and just like the gravitational pull for people to come see it. When that's just you, it's like, man, that's a lot of responsibility. It's like, it can be taxing. Like, that's a huge thing for me. And like a lot of my friends, my cousin Matt's going through right now. Like, he just put out a record and has really done virtually no promoting for it. And he hates promoting. It's a phenomenal record. And just like hates self-promoting, basically. And it's like, it sucks. Like, if people want to listen to it, they'll find it. But that whole aspect of it is really tough, because you gotta whore yourself out. Like, you really do.
And it's probably why you and I went on the tangent of just like, oh yeah, it's we do it because it's self-healing and all this stuff. It's just because it's just like, well, now we have like the excuse of just like why no one will ever hear it or something like that.
We can fall back on that. Yeah, that's the reason. Cool, man. Well, yeah, thanks so much again for doing this. Was there anything you wanted to toss in at the end here?
I mean, those last like 10 minutes there, I guess we should have ended the podcast a while ago, but we went on a tangent, and that's what this is all about. You go down rabbit holes.
I guess, right? It's in the little tagline there, so.
I'm playing in a band, Desperate Living, and that we'll have an EP come out pretty soon on Brutal Panda Records.
Nice.
Again, I don't know dates on any of this stuff, so maybe that'll be like March or April or something like that. My next record with the Elk Band will come out. I'll even follow that with a little EP. So these Elk Band records are 1, 2, and 3 are just the titles of those. I'm currently kind of just started in the early stages of working with a friend I met through you, Eric Sirianni. We're making a record similar to the way I made the Hawks record with Matt Brash, like just the 2 of us. So that'll be a solo record. And who knows if Sun Opus will end up doing something, or something else will come out under Wives too. We'll see. Again, I'm always working on the next thing. 2 days, I have a band practice with a band called Hex.
Dude, what are you doing? How are you doing? I'm sure there's people at this point in the podcast listening, like, how is this guy? Like, what? Is there a place for people to follow, like your website or your Facebook? Like, where's the best place to take people?
I'm terrible at self-promoting, but the reason I keep these things is just for this reason. I guess a general, all-encompassing all of my music stuff. Brian Medlin Music on Facebook, Medlin Music at Twitter, Since you're a podcaster or listener, check out my podcast, Volcano Vinyl, that I do with my buddy Brian. I don't know. I don't have the space for all the things to plug. I don't know.
So much stuff. I love it. We'll like have to get together. Like we'll make a little list. I'll text you and be like, let's prioritize. I was like, what links? Like, where should I send people?
Yeah. I mean, you're gonna be reminding me of stuff like, oh yeah, Sun Opus.
You're right.
I forgot about that.
I wrote it down. I was like, I know there's another one in here. I'm just forgetting.
Like, there's not any left. No, you said them all.
Great, man. Yeah, thanks so much again for doing it. It was really fun. It's been a long time since we hung out, so it was really cool to get to do
this was great. Again, an excuse to hang out and being a listener of the show. Like it's cool to be inside of it.
Yeah, you're here. You're in what's really good. So, all right, peace out, everybody.